So what's actually happening, there's a little rubbing going on between our painted lift hatch and the plastic unpainted piece of the tail light. So there's some rubbing going on in this area that corresponds to this spot here. Thankfully, it's not really bad at this point. It's a little black discoloration on the paint. If we come around to the driver's side, we can see there's a little evidence of white paint here, and it's a little bit worse up here. So the way this assembly is adjusted actually is pretty easy. There's a bumper down here on the tail, above the taillight assembly, and then there's this rubber piece which we can grab. And this is a rubber bumper that is adjustable. So this vehicle is under warranty. I investigated a service visit for this. The closest service center is about 2 hours away. So it wouldn't be a mobile visit to look at this, it would be a service visit. And basically what they're gonna do is adjust this and put some touch-up paint on there. So we're gonna do that ourselves and save us some time. Now, how this rubber bumper works, we can see it's threaded here. So how far you turn this in determines how the standoff distance from this surface to our bumper down here. So all we need to do is make that distance greater, so unscrew it. And then this plastic piece on the outside is a lock nut. So you screw it into the appropriate depth and then tighten this on over the top so this piece does not loosen and change your adjustment. Sounds simple, right? Why didn't they do it at the factory? Maybe this compressed a little bit, lack of attention, just something that was missed. The good news is the design is very accommodating. Let's see if we can get this thing adjusted up pretty quick and put some touch-up paint on there. You really don't need any tools for this. You can, I was able to move it around with my hands just fine, but a Torx 30 and then something to hold the outer piece here, the hard plastic piece, will help a little bit. So what I've done here is just back off our plastic nut and then screw out the rubber bumper a few times, and then we'll do some test fitting, close it and see where we're at. So that has made a huge difference. That has brought that panel gap up where it should be. This was actually hidden down behind the plastic, but our rear door did not latch, so that's too much. We got to adjust it in. So what I'm gonna do is just keep adjusting passenger side, driver side, get this gap up a bit more, have it match with the fender coming in here while it still latches, but to get more clearance between that taillight assembly and our lift gate. It's a bit of iterative process, you gotta play with it. Now, I was able to bring this one up a little bit. It's still a little bit closer. You can see there's a difference in this gap as it comes along. The problem is if I go any more than that, the latch won't close. Let's take a look up here. It's corrected that a little bit, but it's still similar. The driver's side has improved a lot. We have a nice uniform gap in there, and it's brought that level up pretty good. So to lock these bumpers in place, what you want to do is use your Torx bit to hold your inside, and then you tighten that plastic collar around. So to lock these in place, you can use your tools or just use your fingers. It's just as easy. What you have to do is hold the rubber piece stationary and then tighten your outer plastic sleeve and jam it in place, and you'll hear a little click there. The bottom of that plastic sleeve is actually not flat, it's contoured a little bit to catch into the sheet metal. So tighten it up, it'll get nice and firm, and then you hear a little click. And then one thing that does when you tighten that outer plastic sleeve, it actually tensions that rubber piece a little bit, so you got to back it in a little bit. I went right to the edge where this thing will actually close. So I need to go back, turn it in a little bit, tighten that thing out, and get things worked out here so the gate closes. So I've got things adjusted to where I think they need to be. I'm going to do one last test with a strip of paper and just put it in there and make sure it moves freely in that whole joint so it's not rubbing. Yeah, that's working. Let's try the other side. Huge difference on this side. I can just put it in there. Okay, that's a success for us. There is a little bit of a tension when I release the latch. That could be resolved by adjusting the hook here on the underside. The problem is to get at the fasteners, you have to take the bumper off. So maybe that's something for a future service visit. If we need to do something on this vehicle, I'll have them do that also. But right now for myself, I'm gonna leave it like it is. Also, playing with that can adjust the engagement on the weather stripping, which we did have a little bit of effect on here, obviously too also. So I'm gonna check it for wind noise after too and make sure there's no change in wind noise, make sure we didn't lift off this weather stripping, we're not getting a good seal. I'm a little bit concerned if we move this latch, we're gonna lose that also. So we've resolved the rubbing issue. I'm gonna call that done. Things look a little more aligned. We're just gonna touch up the paint and then we're done. First thing I'm gonna do is just clean up the spots with some wax and grease remover, other solvents, paint thinner, rubbing alcohol even would do the trick here. Just a little bit on a paper towel. We've got a very small spot here. After cleaning it up, here's the spot on the passenger side, which you can see there's very little disturbance to the paint layer there, just two tiny little spots. And on the driver's side, we've got a little bit bigger spot, but still pretty small. So obviously anytime we break that paint surface and get into the primer and even below the primer, it looks like it may have got to bare metal. Hopefully there's some primer left. We've got a chance for corrosion. Got some white automotive enamel and this tiny little brush. I'm just going to dab those spots. We don't need a lot. We just need to basically provide an air seal on the spots that have been disturbed. There, I ended up putting a line along the whole thing that will allow me to kind of monitor to see if any of that is disturbed over time. And on the driver's side there, that paint filled in very nicely. You can hardly tell there was ever a disturbance there. It has been a week since I adjusted the lift gate and touched up the paint on our Model Y here. Let's see how things are going. First of all, the lift gate is operating exactly as contended. There's been no close or open airs, so that's a good thing. And if we take a look at the touch-up paint, there's no evidence of rubbing on the passenger side and no evidence of rubbing on the driver's side. So I'm going to consider this a successful adjustment and touch-up paint of our Model Y. The big question is, if you buy a Model Y, are you going to have a similar issue? Now, I don't have any data on that myself. I just have my personal experiences here. This Model Y was built in February at the Austin facility. But it just so happens I do have another example here. This is another 23 Model Y. This one's a long range version versus the white one is a standard range. This one was built in July at the Fremont, California factory. Let's take a look at it and see if it has the same issue. Of course, I've looked at this already and it does not have the same issue. The liftgate is adjusted properly. The panel gaps around the vehicle are all quite similar to the other white one, except it has better clearance in this area. What? There may be a couple reasons for that. This one was made a couple months after the white one, so that maybe their quality department recognized that there were some issues out there and sent out a bulletin and improved training on adjustment of this rear liftgate. The other thing though, most consumers will never notice, but there is a big difference between the standard range Model Y built out of Austin and the long range Model Y, and that has to do with the rear end structure of this vehicle. So the white car, the standard range Model Y built at Austin, employs a structural battery pack and a large aluminum casting for the structure of the rear of it. That is the future. That's what Tesla is moving to with all of their vehicles. This long range Model Y still has a steel weldment for the main structure of the rear of the vehicle. As a consumer and driver, that doesn't really mean much to operate and drive the vehicle. It just makes manufacturing more difficult and expensive, so they're trying to move to these large castings, basically to reduce the amount of parts and time it takes to manufacture a vehicle. That may have caused a stack up or dimensional change on some of those structural battery pack with the large aluminum casting in the rear. That made the setup of the rear slightly different, maybe where the tail light mounts and lands dimensionally was a little different, and some of their setup dimensions may have changed. Okay, so the other big question is, based on the initial quality, the build quality, panel gaps and that, would I buy another one? Well, I guess I answered that question because I've got the blue one in the garage now. Yes, overall, extremely happy with the vehicles. Hope this helps you out. Not only look for these issues on your car, be proactive and stop them before they become a major corrosion issue. And also, if you're researching buying a Tesla or not, gives you some little information on some of the little things that you may experience during ownership. Thanks for watching. Adios.